So the level of reports about farmers' default on loans, credits, and grants are on the increase in Nigeria, a problem that threatens government's efforts at ensuring agro-industrialization, food sustainability, job creation, among others. Joining me to discuss this very worrying trend within the wider agriculture sector challenges is African farmer Mogaji. He's an agriculture expert and CEO at Farmcredit.ng. Great to have you here this evening, Mogaji.
Thank you for having me.
You listened to the governor, NYESOM WIKE of Rivers State there. Very interesting comment he's made regarding the level of unpaid credit or grants given to farmers by the state government. What do you make of that lamentation, as it were?
His lamentation just shows a couple of weaknesses. One, it shows that I'm not sure the ministry understands that value chain for 1%. Last year was very challenging for the agri sector across board. The questions need to be asked as regards, what happened. Climate change affected, the lockdown affected. We had very low input last year. But for 1%, how did they plan to monitor? Who was monitoring? At what time? A general challenge is, at what time of the year did they advance the loans to the farmers? Was it to plant? Okay, you mentioned fish and co. So last year, they need to really research. It needs to tell us that what happened. Did the farmers collect the money and not spend? Did the money get to the farmers? Or did the money get to political people, as in rural political aids? With a lot of things needs to be asked for us to be able to have a good conversation around why farmers didn't pay back.
5 billion naira, if you put that in a room or in these studios, I'm not sure we'll be able to move around. It's a whole lot of money by whatever value today is, exchange rate, inflation, whatever. About 5 billion naira is a whole lot of money. And for the governor to speak about this, any idea what the chief causative factors are for farmers defaulting on loans, credits, or grants? Is it a function of habit? Is it a culture of, look, it's government's money, it's our own share, here I got mine?
So we had a use of words. You call it credit, you call it grant. Which exactly is it? Grant, they're not supposed to pay back. Credit, they're supposed to pay back. So which is it? Because when you listen also to that conversation, the governor was talking about we don't want them to bring interest. So bottom line is that I'm not sure the program was very clear on the aim it was meant to achieve using the word grant and credit. However, like I mentioned, 5 billion is a lot of money that could have changed even the agricultural climate in Rivers State. So basically, I tell you from experience of what happens with government projects is, number one, the timing is always wrong. When I use always, I mean 99.9% always wrong. Timing is always wrong. 2, they don't give it to the right people. 3, it's towards the wrong project. Because if they fund these farmers with this money and they don't fund the value chain, when they are disbursing, they will be disbursing to the value chain. Transportation, logistics, distribution, seed, fertilizer. Did they have a blueprint of a value chain? If they just fund, go and fish. If they fished and there was lockdown, how do they sell the fish? So
okay.
There need to be
well, let's stand by. African farmer Mogaji, stand by. We've got a lot more grounds to cover on this subject after the break. Let's take a quick one. This is RS Exchange. Yeah, welcome back. There are complaints of some Nigerian farmers defaulting on loans, credits, and other forms of support that they have received from Nigerian government agencies. My guest, African farmer Mogaji, a renowned agri practitioner, is helping us to drill beyond the headlines on this particular development. Thank you for standing by. And you're talking about some of your experience, and I'm just getting into what you call non-cash-based farm inputs. What have you seen or heard about this on the ground among the local farmers in the country?
Well, First and foremost is, just like you were talking about the Moody's report, talking about weak institutions, it also affects the agri sector because most of especially the fertilizers, which many farmers depend on, many of those fertilizers are adulterated or totally fake. So when you are expected to use 10 bags maybe to get 4 tons, and you use 10 bags and you are getting 1.5 tons, there's no way you repay that loan. So bottom line is that if we have strong institutions that ensure that the agrochemicals that the farmers are using, is top notch, then you can hold the farmers accountable. I'll add this to it. In one of the northeastern states that I did a project like 2 years ago, with the ADP, they used to have 15,000 extension workers. Currently, they have less than 1,500. So there's no amount of money you give the farmers with the knowledge sharing and the interaction that can happen. So there are many things that we need to look into before we can appraise why farmers are not repaying. But last year was a peculiar year, really.
Yeah, so what about farm inputs, aside fertilizer? What about seedlings and all that? Sometimes we've gotten some reports that some seedlings are cooked and consumed.
So you see, when we talk about funding farmers, like I mentioned earlier, value chain, most of the seeds, and I stand to be corrected, I've put in well over 2 decades, most of the seeds, the best 1, 2 grades of the seeds in this country is imported. So if it's imported and last year dollar affected it, what that did was to open the opportunity for the people who would give adulteration to give wrong seeds into the market. So what needs to be funded is those seeds, those chemicals, those fertilizers. Like Anchor Borrower now, Anchor Borrower's funds from the CBN doesn't give cash to the farmers. Gives agri inputs to the farmer, but what quality of input does the farmer get? So when we check this, even Anchor Borrower is also having challenges, even though it's a laudable initiative. But bottom line is that how are we reviewing these things? How is CBN helping to ensure that the institutions, are strengthened to make sure that, their effort also yields results? So that's a major challenge affecting our food security, weak institutions.
Weak institutions, you talk about adulterated fertilizers. Do we have adulterated seedlings? Do we have adulterated pesticides and all? Who's bringing them in? Who is distributing this to farmers?
So when it comes to like seeds now, most of the grains like the rice, soya bean, take for instance for the rice. There's a difference between seed and grain. What we eat is grain, but I can tell you what over 50% of the farmers plant is grain. The seeds give you higher yield. They are more, they have higher price, but what they package as seed is grain. So your yield will also, you will get the yield of grain and not seed. Most of the agri-chemicals we have, most of them, you find them sold for like 1,200, 1,500. I normally would say this, if you go to the farmers, most of the containers, has better quality than what is inside. Almost all, when I say almost all, I mean over 90% of the agrochemicals that we use also is imported. Just about 2 or 3 companies reconstitute the concentrate here. So there's no way we would be able to attain food security and get farmers to pay back when the farmer, on the carton or on the bottle labels, you will see apply every 2 weeks. But in the field, you must apply every week, which also influences why they reject our beans because of high pesticide residue. The farmer is not to blame, it's what the farmer gets to buy. So what is sold for 2,200, the quality sometimes is sold for 7,000, 10,000, sometimes 22,000. So bottom line is that, yes, the farmers, a lot of the rural farmers, the old farmers are not faithful also. Many of those programs, as they receive the input, where you try not to give them money, as they receive the input, they sell directly across the road. The same supplier that supplied brings cash with his boys across the road and buys back. It is common knowledge. The government staffs know it. It's the governors that don't know it, or the Minister of Agriculture, but it is common practice. And they feel, oh, it's national cake. Like a fertilizer, if you see the coat of arms of Nigeria currently on any fertilizer, the farmers are not buying because that's the lowest quality of fertilizer in this country currently. Don't take my word, do the research. The farmers are running from government fertilizer, which should not be. So investors that put in money, that invest even in the private sector, the younger ones coming up, by the time you go buy, we should have that confidence that it's government. By the time you go and buy that fertilizer and you use it, you run into debt. Last year was devastating across the country because of the lockdown. And you see, take for instance, let's talk about poultry. Now, for the poultry sector, the restriction on maize, which is the ban, all this affect. So you invest in poultry. Like, let's say in Rivers State, they gave farmers poultry money. Now, a day-old chick, which is a baby chick, was sold for $150. Suddenly, after the ban or restriction, it moved to $400. The bag of animal feed, poultry feed, that was $2,150, moved to $5,200. So how will the farmer pay back? So the weak institutions and not thought through initiatives across board helps the farmer to hide. But generally, not having the right input and the value chain affected.
We've got quite a whole lot of problem on our hands. So you look at a government agency such as NASL is currently engaging farmers in Gombe and Kebbi states on their default of credit lines, which was given to them. How do you respond to that engagement?
Well, I will tell you, and I stand to be corrected on this, I'm a big fan of anchor borrower and a big fan of the CBN governor, but the CBN needs to work on one thing. Most of those funds is released at the wrong time. There's a period you must give the farmer the funds or the input to farm. Most times it comes late. The program is designed that you release the funds in two tranches. It's either the first tranche is given at the right time and the second tranche, comes very late. So the anchor borrower needs to improve on that, and that gives the farmer the room. So farmers mostly now go and borrow money from the merchants that they will sell to at very high prices to complete the project. And when they complete, they pay and they don't give back. So I've witnessed this in Gombe. It's not something I read in the newspapers. I witnessed it. One of the old commissioners there, last administration, decided not to release the second tranche of the money because he knew the money came late. So what I'm saying is that as much as the initiative is laudable, the timing, it is all about timing. In the last 5 years, it is timing. When you give a farmer money around August, September, when he ought to have planted in April, May, they will take the money and spend it and say it's national cake. And that is really what is affecting. Timing.
So we have state governments like Rivers State deciding to build a cassava processing factory. Lagos State is building one of the largest rice mill ever, and so on. Do you think these facilities being built by state governments will be a game changer for farmers and for our agric industry?
It should, and I use the word, it should be a game changer if the governors are willing to embrace the private sector to run this project. It should not be run by government. And awarding who is in charge of those facilities should not be government. Because the moment the farmer sees government, we all know during election year, monies that they won't get their payment on time because there's the people in charge are also politically inclined. So it's supposed to, but I hope it is. Like for Cross River now, when you build giant facilities, it requires more in terms of operational cost and strategy to make it function and get results. So most of the states are building giant projects. maybe that's not what should happen, but it's happened. But the other thing is that they need to decentralize that value chain of seed, fertilizer, chemicals, allow it for the private sector to run that chain, and they just focus on the mill. Yes, Cross River Rivers is doing that now. I even salute Governor WIKE coming on air to say it didn't work, meaning he's ready to make it work. So we would get it right if we embrace the private sector to run it and not government. Election is coming. The old farmers are wise. We need to move away from these old farmers. At the same time, we cannot also embrace the youths the way we want to embrace them because they are not wired for the production yet. We need to be deliberate in looking for sons of farmers and daughters of farmers who have the exposure, and we give them the right input to do the job. And finally, on that is that we need to ensure that we build a trust in the farmers, because most of these big projects over the years, and I stand to be corrected, like one state, if it's working, it is new. 3 years down the line, what's happening? What needs to happen is that it should be run commercially. Government staffs are good managers, but not good commercial managers. So that needs to be paid attention to.
Well, if you're looking for sons and daughters of farmers, I'm available. But I left about 45 years ago. I'm not too sure I can...
Your cousins are there.
I'm so rusty right now in the studios that I'm so rusty I can't get back on that. I'm not sure I can do cocoa farming anymore. I did all that as kids and all of that. So don't look for me. Just exclude me from that. But again, I'm sure there are a whole lot of others, and we can stay here discussing key issues like this and bringing the whole problems to the fore. But again, you said the private sector should run this. So in a words, the Lagos State rice mill should be built and be handed over to private sector, for example, like the Dangote refinery, something like that?
Anyway, that's the template, because I've been involved in various conversations with the Lagos rice mill. Lagos is actually toeing the right path, bringing in private sector to make the project, work across the value chain. We've had series of conversations with the Commissioner of Agriculture, with a dynamic lady who knows her onions, and she's neither a politician nor a technocrat. She's in between. She's doing the job well, balancing the two. So with the Lagos State rice, I'm very optimistic, because Lagos State is also bringing in Ogun, Oyo, Ekiti, and Osun, not making it only a Lagos project. I hope Rivers also embraces that, because these projects are huge. Hundreds of thousands of hectares is required to feed the factory. So it's not about the starting. It's 5 years down the line, the jobs promised to be delivered.
African Farmer Mogaji, thank you so much for your time this evening. Have a pleasant weekend. African Farmer Mogaji, agri expert and CEO at Farmcredit.ng. Thank you very much.